I am Christina, 34 years old, and I once believed my marriage to Jake was unbreakable. 8 years together, building a life in our cozy suburban home. But when he suddenly developed an interest in solo camping trips, something felt wrong. The late-night texts, the password changes, the scent of unfamiliar perfume. My stomach knotted with each lie. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you've ever had that gut feeling something wasn't right in your relationship, hit the like and subscribe buttons. Trust me, what I discovered next changed everything. Jake and I met at a local book fair 8 years ago. I was browsing through a collection of classic literature when he accidentally knocked over my stack of selected books. As he scrambled to pick them up, our hands touched over a copy of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. We laughed at the cliché moment, and he asked if he could make it up to me with coffee. That coffee turned into dinner, and dinner turned into 8 beautiful years of marriage. I am an elementary school teacher dedicated to my third graders at Maple Grove Elementary. Jake worked as a software engineer at a growing tech company downtown. We complemented each other perfectly. While I nurtured young minds, he built digital solutions. My creativity balanced his logic. His stability grounded my spontaneity. Our home in the suburbs wasn't extravagant, but it was ours. A modest 3-bedroom with a backyard where I tended to my garden. Every spring, I would plant tomatoes, bell peppers, and zucchini. Jake built me raised garden beds and installed an irrigation system so my plants would never go thirsty when we traveled. The neighbors would often comment on how beautiful our yard looked compared to the other cookie-cutter homes in the development. We had routines that made our marriage special. Sunday mornings were sacred. Jake would wake up early to prepare his famous blueberry pancakes while I brewed coffee and set the table with fresh flowers from the garden. We would eat on the patio, weather permitting, and plan our week ahead. Friday nights were movie nights. We would alternate picking films, respecting each other's choices, even when they weren't to our personal taste. Jake tolerated my love for romantic comedies while I sat through his action films and science fiction epics. For our 5th anniversary, we flew to California and drove down the Pacific Coast Highway. We stayed at charming bed and breakfasts along the way, drank wine in Napa Valley, and watched the sunset at Big Sur. Jake surprised me with a vow renewal on the beach. It wasn't elaborate, just us and a local officiant he had arranged beforehand. I cried when he pulled out the new rings he had bought to commemorate our journey together. Our friends, Natalie and Ryan, often said we were their relationship goals. At dinner parties, people would ask us for advice. What was our secret? We would exchange knowing glances and say communication and respect. And I believed it. We talked about everything. There were disagreements, of course, but never shouting matches or days of silence. We worked through issues together as a team. We had plans, so many plans. We had been saving for a bigger house with enough bedrooms for the children we hoped to have. Jake had been tracking our finances, meticulously creating spreadsheets to show when we could afford to start our family. We dreamed of taking our future children to Europe, showing them the Eiffel Tower, the canals of Venice, the ancient ruins of Rome. Jake had even started learning Italian through an app on his phone. Every night before bed, we would share the best part of our day with each other. Sometimes, it was as simple as a student drawing me a picture, or Jake solving a complex coding problem. Other times, it was profound, like when Jake told me the best part of his day was simply coming home to me. How could I have known those words would later feel like daggers? In 8 years of marriage, I never once doubted Jake's loyalty. Not when he worked late with female colleagues. Not when he traveled for conferences. I trusted him completely. I believed in our love and our commitment. I thought we were different from other couples who grew apart or broke under pressure. We were Jake and Christina Rock, solid and true. During the holidays, our house became the gathering place for both our families. My parents adored Jake, and his mother treated me like the daughter she never had. We would cook together, play board games, and stay up late reminiscing about past holidays and planning future ones. These moments reinforced my belief that we had created something special and lasting. Looking back now, I realize that trust is both a gift and a vulnerability. When you trust completely, you stop looking for signs of betrayal. You explain away unusual behavior. You make excuses. You convince yourself that your suspicions are just insecurities. But sometimes, that small voice inside you, the one whispering that something isn't right, is trying to protect you from the truth you're not ready to face. But as our 8th anniversary approached, I had no idea that the foundation of our marriage was already cracking beneath my feet. I believed in us. I believed in Jake. I believed in forever. The changes were subtle at first, so subtle, I almost missed them. Jake started coming home later from work. Not dramatically late, just 30 minutes here, an hour there. He explained it away easily. A new project, a demanding client, a system failure that needed immediate attention. All perfectly reasonable explanations from a dedicated professional. Then came the weekend work. Jake had occasionally put in a few hours on Saturday mornings throughout our marriage, but suddenly it became every weekend, sometimes both days. He would kiss me goodbye in the morning, saying he needed to go to the office to use the more powerful computers there. When I suggested bringing him lunch one day, he quickly discouraged me, saying the security system was being updated and guests weren't allowed. Around this time, Jake developed a sudden interest in camping. This was the first real red flag that something had changed. In 8 years together, Jake had never shown any interest in outdoor activities. He preferred the comfort of our home, enjoying video games or watching sports on weekends. He complained about bugs when we had picnics and always chose hotels over the campgrounds when we traveled. But seemingly overnight, he became an outdoor enthusiast. He started watching YouTube videos about camping techniques, researching gear, and talking about the benefits of reconnecting with nature. When I expressed surprise at this new interest, he claimed he had always wanted to try it, but never had the time before. Jake's phone became an extension of his hand. He kept it face down when not using it, took it with him to the bathroom, and jumped whenever it buzzed. Once when I picked it up to move it from the counter, he snapped at me in a tone he had never used before. He apologized immediately, blaming work stress, but the moment lingered in my mind. Then there were the passwords. We had always shared our phone passwords, not because we checked on each other, but because it was convenient. If his phone was charging and mine was dead, I could use his to look something up, or vice versa. But one day, when I tried to use his phone to order takeout, I discovered the password had been changed. When I asked about it, Jake claimed it was a new company policy for security reasons. All employees had to change their passwords regularly and couldn't share them with anyone, even spouses. His grooming habits changed too. Jake started going to an actual hairstylist instead of the basic barbershop he had used for years. He bought new cologne without mentioning it. He began working out more regularly, monitoring his diet, and buying new clothes. These changes weren't necessarily suspicious on their own. People evolve after all. But combined with everything else, they formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. One evening, we had dinner with our friends Natalie and Ryan. During the meal, Jake mentioned a work project he was collaborating on with a colleague named Amanda. I noticed he mentioned her name multiple times throughout the evening, describing her insights, her problem-solving skills, her innovative approaches. There was an animation in his voice when he spoke about her that made my stomach tighten. When we got home that night, I casually asked about Amanda. Jake's reaction was telling. He became defensive, then dismissive, saying she was just a coworker, nothing special. But his eyes wouldn't meet mine, and he quickly changed the subject. That night, I lay awake beside him, listening to his breathing, wondering if he was dreaming of someone else. My sleep suffered. I began waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning, my mind racing with scenarios and suspicions. During the day, I found myself checking Jake's location on our shared account, watching the dot that represented him moving through the city, wondering if it was telling me the truth. I started second-guessing myself. Was I being paranoid? Was I creating problems where none existed? Jake had always been faithful. We had a good marriage. Perhaps this was just a rough patch, or maybe I was projecting my own insecurities onto his innocent behavior. Then I found the receipt. I was doing laundry and emptied Jake's pockets before putting his jeans in the wash. A crumpled paper fell out. It was a receipt for camping equipment. Not just the basics, but high-end gear. A 2-person tent. A double sleeping bag designed for couples. Cooking equipment for 2. Nearly $1,000 worth of supplies for someone who had never camped before. The date on the receipt showed he had purchased these items during one of his weekend work sessions. I confronted him that evening asking about the camping gear. He seemed startled that I had found the receipt but quickly recovered. He explained that he wanted to surprise me with a romantic weekend away. When I pointed out that I had never expressed interest in camping either, he backtracked, saying he thought it would be fun for us to try something new together. I almost believed him. I wanted to believe him. But when he mentioned he was planning a solo trip first to test out the gear before taking me, the excuse fell flat. Why would he need a 2-person tent and a couple's sleeping bag for a solo trip? Why not wait and experience it together for the first time? My concerns grew when Jake started taking longer showers immediately after coming home. He had always been the type to shower in the morning, but now he would come home and head straight to the bathroom. I noticed he would put his clothes directly into the washing machine rather than the hamper. One evening, I detected the faint scent of a floral perfume on his shirt before it went into the wash. Around this time, Jake announced he would be attending a weekend work retreat in a few weeks. When I asked for details, he was vague. The location was a conference center near a state park. The dates were firm, but the schedule was still being determined. No spouses weren't invited. It was strictly for team building and project planning. Every instinct told me something was wrong, but I had no concrete proof, only a collection of changes and coincidences that could each be explained away individually. But together, they formed a picture I wasn't ready to see clearly. The husband I loved, the man I trusted completely, was pulling away from me, and I didn't know why or how to stop it. The morning that changed everything started like any other. Jake was rushing to get ready for work, gulping down coffee and checking his phone between bites of toast. He kissed me goodbye, told me he loved me, and headed out the door. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Jake asking if he had left his phone at home. My heart raced as I spotted it on the kitchen counter. He must have put it down while eating and forgotten it in his rush. Jake asked if I could bring it to him at work during my lunch break. I agreed, and he thanked me, saying he had meetings all morning and couldn't come back for it. After we hung up, I stared at his phone sitting there almost pulsing with secrets. I had never been the type to snoop. I believed in privacy and trust. But all the little changes, all the explanations that didn't quite add up, all the nights I'd lain awake wondering, pushed me toward a line I never thought I'd cross. I picked up his phone. The screen was locked, but I knew his new password would be some variation of his usual one. After 3 attempts, I was in. My hands trembled as I opened his messaging app. I told myself I would just take a quick look just to reassure myself that my suspicions were unfounded, that I was being paranoid and insecure. Jake's most recent conversation was with someone named Amanda, the same Amanda from work. The Amanda he had mentioned so enthusiastically at dinner with our friends. I tapped on the conversation, and my world collapsed. The messages between them went back months. What started as work discussions had evolved into flirtations, then explicit exchanges. There were photos I couldn't bring myself to look at fully. And there were plans. Detailed plans for a weekend camping trip. The work retreat Jake had told me about was actually a romantic getaway with Amanda. They had chosen a campsite at Silver Lake State Park, about 2 hours from our home. They had discussed what food to bring, what activities to do, and what would happen in that 2-person tent with the couple's sleeping bag. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I forwarded the entire conversation to my email along with several photos that showed the two of them together at what appeared to be after-work happy hours, her hand on his arm, his eyes looking at her in a way he used to look at me. I needed evidence. I needed proof that I wasn't crazy, that my suspicions weren't just paranoia. Just as I finished, the phone rang again. It was Jake calling from his work phone. I took a deep breath and answered casually. "Hey, have you found it?" he asked. "Yes, it was on the counter," I replied, amazed at how normal my voice sounded when everything inside me was screaming. "Great, so you'll bring it at lunch?" "Of course," I said, wondering if he could hear the breaking of my heart through the phone. After hanging up, I sat at our kitchen table, the phone now locked and innocent-looking beside me. The messages played through my mind like a horror movie I couldn't turn off. 8 years of marriage, of building a life together, of trusting and loving and planning a future, and all along he had been capable of this betrayal. I needed to know more about Amanda. Using my own phone, I searched for her on social media. It didn't take long to find her. Amanda Martin, project manager at Jake's company. Her profile was mostly private, but her profile picture showed a smiling woman with auburn hair and green eyes. She was beautiful in an effortless way, with the kind of confidence that radiated even through a photograph. Further scrolling revealed photos where Jake appeared in the background at company events. In one image from the company holiday party 6 months ago, they stood near each other, not touching, but with a proximity that seemed charged, even in the frozen moment. 6 months. The timeline matched the changes I had noticed in Jake. The late nights, the weekend work, the new interests and habits. It had been going on for at least that long. Everything suddenly made sense. The camping equipment wasn't for us. It was for them. The work retreats, the new passwords, the showers as soon as he got home. Every lie, every evasion, every subtle change in our relationship had an explanation, and that explanation was Amanda. I printed the most damning messages and photos, then placed them in a folder which I hid in my classroom at school. I would need these if Jake tried to deny everything or twist the situation to make me seem paranoid. As I drove to Jake's office with his phone, I rehearsed what I would say. Should I confront him immediately? Should I wait until we were home? Should I pretend I knew nothing and gather more information? The weight of the decision crushed me. This wasn't just about a confrontation. This was about the future of my marriage, my home, my life as I knew it. I pulled into the parking lot of his office building and texted him that I had arrived. He came down minutes later, looking slightly harried, but smiling when he saw me. That smile, once the highlight of my day, now seemed like the cruelest deception. "You're a lifesaver," he said, leaning in to kiss me. I turned my head slightly so his lips landed on my cheek instead of my mouth. If he noticed, he didn't comment. "No problem," I replied, handing him the phone. "Everything locked up tight." Something in my tone must have alerted him because his expression changed just for a moment, a flicker of concern crossing his features. "Everything okay?" "Just tired," I lied, becoming as skilled at deception as he was. "Have a good day. See you tonight." As I drove away, I watched him in my rearview mirror, standing in the parking lot, looking after me, with what might have been confusion or concern. Or perhaps it was just relief that I hadn't discovered his secret. Little did he know everything had already changed. I just hadn't decided what to do about it yet. That evening, when Jake came home, I had composed myself enough to act normal. Or what passed for normal when your entire world has been upended. He walked through the door, kissed me hello as usual, and headed straight for the shower. I sat in the living room, listening to the water run, imagining him washing away the evidence of his day, perhaps of her. When he emerged and joined me on the couch, I decided it was time. I couldn't carry this knowledge alone for another minute. I turned to face him, my heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. I need to ask you something, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. And I need you to be honest with me. Jake's expression was careful, guarded. Of course. What's up? Who is Amanda to you? The question hung in the air between us. I watched his face, saw the micro-expressions flash across it. Surprise, fear, calculation, then a carefully constructed neutrality. Amanda? From work. She's just a colleague. We're on the same project team. Why? I took a deep breath. When I had your phone today, I saw messages between you two. I know about the camping trip. I know it's not a work retreat. Jake's face hardened, then shifted to indignation. You went through my phone, Christina. How could you invade my privacy like that? The audacity of his response stunned me. He was turning this around, making me the villain for discovering his betrayal, rather than acknowledging what he had done. Don't try to make this about me checking your phone, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. This is about you having an affair. This is about you lying to me for months. Jake stood up, pacing the living room, running his hands through his hair in frustration. It's not what you think. Amanda and I are friends. Yes, we've been texting, but you're blowing this way out of proportion. You're being paranoid and jealous over nothing. Nothing? I echoed in disbelief. I saw the messages, Jake. I saw the photos. I know about the camping trip you're planning with her while telling me it's a work retreat. How is that nothing? He changed tactics, his voice softening. Look, I admit Amanda and I have gotten close. We connect really well at work, and yes, there's been some flirting. But that's all it is. The camping trip is just friends hanging out. I was going to tell you, but I knew you'd react exactly like this. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was still lying, still trying to manipulate me into doubting what I had seen with my own eyes. The explicit messages, the intimate photos, the detailed plans for their weekend away. None of that aligned with his story of innocent friendship. So, the sleeping arrangements for this friendly camping trip? I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Do they involve the 2-person tent and couple's sleeping bag you bought? The ones you told me were for a surprise trip for us? Jake's face flushed. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, recalibrating his approach. I never actually said the camping gear was for us. You assumed that. And you let me assume it, I shot back. Just like you let me assume you were working weekends when you were with her. Just like you let me assume your passwords changed due to work policy when really you were hiding things from me. Jake's demeanor changed again, this time to wounded innocence. I'm hurt that you don't trust me. After 8 years together, you should know me better than this. You're creating problems where none exist. Your jealousy and insecurity are damaging our relationship. I felt like I was in a twisted game where the rules kept changing. Jake was gaslighting me, making me question my own perceptions and feelings, trying to shift blame onto me rather than accepting responsibility for his actions. It was manipulative and cruel, and it revealed a side of him I had never seen before. This isn't about trust or jealousy, I said firmly. This is about evidence, hard evidence that you're having an affair with Amanda. I saw the messages. I saw you call her baby and tell her how much you want her. I saw you planning a romantic weekend while lying to my face about where you would be. For a moment, Jake's mask slipped, and I saw panic in his eyes, but he quickly recovered. You're misinterpreting playful banter between friends. If you read the whole conversation in context, you'd understand. And now you've violated my privacy and created this huge drama over nothing. Do you realize how controlling that seems? I felt tears welling up, but refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me break down. The camping trip this weekend. Are you going with her? Jake hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but as friends, part of a group from work. It's not what you're thinking. Another lie. The messages had made it clear it would be just the two of them. I stood up suddenly, exhausted by the conversation, by the lies, by the realization that I was arguing with someone who was committed to denying reality. "I don't believe you," I said simply. "But I'm not going to beg you to tell me the truth. Go on your trip. Do what you need to do." Jake looked relieved, probably thinking I was backing down, maybe even believing his lies. "I'll prove to you it's innocent. When I get back, we can talk more, and you'll see you've been worrying over nothing." I didn't respond. I walked to our bedroom and closed the door, leaving him standing in the living room. I heard him sigh, then moved to the kitchen, probably thinking he had successfully managed the situation. But as I sat on our bed, staring at the wedding photo on the nightstand, I wasn't defeated. I was planning. The next morning, Jake tried to act as if everything was normal. He kissed me goodbye, told me he loved me, and said he would call me that evening from the work retreat. One more lie to add to the growing collection. I smiled and nodded, playing along with the charade. But inside, my decision had been made. I would not be the wife who looked the other way. I would not be the woman who begged her husband to choose her over his mistress. I would act with dignity and purpose, and I would make sure Jake understood exactly what he was throwing away. That night, sleep eluded me. I tossed and turned, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and uncertain futures. Around 3 a.m, I gave up on sleep altogether. I got out of bed, made a cup of tea, and sat at our kitchen table with a notepad. It was time to make a plan. I had always been the type of person who processed emotions through action. When my grandfather died, I channeled my grief into organizing his photographs and creating memorial albums for the family. When I was passed over for a promotion at school, I developed a new curriculum that eventually got me recognized. Now faced with the collapse of my marriage, I needed to act. The first person I called when morning came was my best friend, Natalie. We had been friends since college, and she knew Jake almost as long as I had. When I told her what I had discovered, she was silent for a long moment. "I wish I could say I'm surprised," she finally said, her voice heavy. "But something has felt off with him for a while now. Remember at our dinner party last month how he kept checking his phone and how defensive he got when Ryan asked about it? I hadn't connected those dots until now, but Natalie was right. The signs had been there, visible even to others. Maybe I had been the only one unwilling to see them." "What are you going to do?" Natalie asked. "I'm not sure yet," I admitted. "But I know I won't just sit here and take it, and I won't beg him to choose me either." "Good," Natalie said firmly. "You deserve better than that. You should leave him, Christina. Make a clean break." "I'm considering it," I said. "But first, I want him to know that I know. I want him to understand what he's losing." After talking with Natalie, I began gathering information. I checked our joint accounts and was relieved to find Jake hadn't drained any of them, though I did notice some unusual expenses that now made sense. Meals at restaurants we had never been to together. Gift shop purchases. Hotel charges from business trips that had seemed longer than necessary. I made copies of all our important documents: birth certificates, marriage license, property deeds, insurance policies, tax returns. I placed these in a secure folder and left it with Natalie for safekeeping. If things went south quickly, I wanted to be prepared. Next, I researched divorce attorneys in our area. I didn't schedule a consultation yet, but I saved the contact information of 3 who specialized in cases involving infidelity. Wisconsin was a no-fault divorce state, but evidence of an affair could potentially impact property division and alimony in some circumstances. Throughout the day, Jake texted me as if nothing was wrong, checking in, asking about my day, saying he missed me. Each message felt like salt in an open wound. I responded minimally, giving him nothing to be suspicious about, but offering none of the warmth and love he had come to expect from me. He didn't seem to notice the difference. That evening, I used the location sharing app on our phones to confirm what I already knew. Jake was not at a conference center for a work retreat. He was at Silver Lake State Park, exactly where he had planned to meet Amanda. Seeing the confirmation on my screen made my stomach knot, but it also strengthened my resolve. I spent the rest of the evening researching the campground. I found a map of the park noting the various camping areas and hiking trails. Based on their messages, I knew they had reserved a spot in the Pine Loop area, one of the more private sections of the campground. I studied the layout, planning my approach. The next step was to book a room at the Mountain View Inn, a small hotel about 15 minutes from the campground. I reserved it for the following night, paying with my personal credit card rather than our joint one. Jake wouldn't know I had been anywhere near his romantic getaway. With the logistical details arranged, I turned my attention to what I would actually do. I had no interest in creating a dramatic scene. I wouldn't storm into their campsite screaming accusations. I wouldn't slash tires or destroy property. Such actions would only make me look unstable and give Jake ammunition to paint me as the villain in our story. No, my approach would be subtler, more meaningful. I wanted to leave something that would make Jake confront the reality of his choices. Something that would stay with him long after the weekend was over. Something that would remind him of what he was throwing away for a fleeting affair. I went to our home office and opened the bottom drawer of my desk, where I kept memorabilia from our relationship. The ticket stubs from our first movie date, the dried boutonniere from our wedding, the handwritten vows we had exchanged, the anniversary cards filled with promises of eternal love and fidelity. 8 years of memories, tangible proof of a commitment now broken. I selected a few items, a small photo album I had made for our 5th anniversary, containing pictures from throughout our relationship. The handwritten letter Jake had given me on our wedding day, promising to be faithful and true for all our days. A USB drive, which I would load with copies of his messages with Amanda, undeniable evidence of his betrayal. The final touch came to me as I was about to close the drawer. At the very bottom lay the small carved wooden box Jake had given me on our 1st anniversary. Inside was a compass inscribed with the words, "You are my true north." Jake had told me it symbolized that no matter where life took us, he would always find his way back to me. The irony was not lost on me. I added it to my collection. As I gathered these items, I felt a strange sense of calm, replacing the chaos of emotions that had consumed me since discovering the affair. I was taking back control. I was refusing to be a victim. I was acting with purpose rather than reacting from pain. This wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity and truth. It was about making sure Jake couldn't hide from the reality of what he was doing, not just to me, but to himself. With my plan in place and my items gathered, I finally felt tired enough to sleep. Tomorrow would be a day of action, a day of standing up for myself in a way that was true to who I was. Not a scorned woman lashing out in anger, but a strong woman refusing to be disrespected and lied to any longer. As I drifted off to sleep in our empty bed, I realized that regardless of what happened next, whether Jake came back repentant or continued his deception, I would be okay. Because I was reclaiming my power, one careful step at a time. Saturday morning arrived with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. I packed a small overnight bag for my stay at the Mountain View Inn and placed my carefully selected items in a separate tote bag. I dressed in comfortable clothes suitable for walking through a campground: jeans, a plain gray t-shirt, and hiking boots. Nothing that would stand out or draw attention. Before leaving, I stood in our bedroom, looking at the space Jake and I had shared for years. The king-sized bed where we had slept intertwined. The reading lamp on his nightstand next to the stack of science fiction novels he was always working through. The framed wedding photo on my side, capturing a moment when our joy had seemed limitless and genuine. I wondered if I would ever see this room the same way again, or if it would forever be tainted by the knowledge of his betrayal. The drive to Silver Lake State Park took just under 2 hours. I played no music, preferring the silence to gather my thoughts and steady my nerves. The late September weather was perfect warm sunshine, filtering through trees just beginning to show hints of autumn color. Under different circumstances, it would have been a beautiful day for a drive. I arrived at the park around 11:30, timing my visit carefully. From their messages, I knew Jake and Amanda had planned a hiking excursion along the lake trail that would keep them away from the campsite for several hours. They had discussed packing a picnic lunch and finding a secluded spot by the water. The thought of them sharing an intimate meal while I drove toward them made my stomach turn, but I pushed the image away. I needed to focus. The entrance to the park was uncrowded for a Saturday, the peak summer season having passed. I paid the day use fee and took a map from the ranger station, though I had already memorized the layout from my research. I drove slowly through the park following signs for the Pine Loop camping area. As I approached, my heart rate increased. What if they had changed their plans? What if they were still at the campsite? What if I encountered them face to face? I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I had seen Jake's location on the tracking app just before leaving home. He was on the trail exactly where he was supposed to be, according to their plan. I parked in the day-use area near the Pine Loop, leaving my car among several others so it wouldn't stand out. With my tote bag in hand, I walked casually toward the campground, appearing to any observer like just another park visitor enjoying the day. The Pine Loop was partially occupied with perhaps half the sites hosting tents or small campers. I walked through, glancing at each site, until I spotted Jake's car, a blue Subaru Outback, parked at Site 23. The sight of it, physical confirmation that he was here with her, sent a wave of nausea through me. I paused, closing my eyes briefly until the feeling passed. Their campsite was neat and well organized, exactly as I would expect from Jake. The new tent, a sleek two-person model in dark green, was set up in the flattest part of the site. A portable camping stove sat on the picnic table along with cooking supplies and 2 camping chairs positioned side by side facing the fire pit. 2 pairs of hiking boots had been left outside the tent. One pair was Jake's. The other, smaller pair presumably belonged to Amanda. I looked around carefully, confirming that no one was watching. The neighboring sites were either empty or their occupants were away. I approached the tent with steady steps, refusing to skulk or sneak. If anyone questioned me, I would simply say I was leaving something for my husband. It wasn't even a lie. The tent wasn't zipped closed, just the outer rainfly pulled shut. I opened it and peered inside. The interior was dominated by the double sleeping bag Jake had purchased, laid out on top of 2 camping pads pushed together. A lantern hung from the center hook. 2 backpacks were placed at the foot of the sleeping bag, and a novel lay open on what was clearly Amanda's side. I knelt and carefully removed the items from my tote bag. First, the photo album. I opened it to a specific page, one showing Jake and me on our wedding day, faces alight with genuine joy and love. I placed it in the center of the sleeping bag, impossible to miss. Next, the wooden box containing the compass. I positioned it beside the album lid, open to reveal the inscription. "You are my true north." A reminder of promises made and broken. The USB drive I tucked partway under the photo album, its presence a silent acknowledgement that I had evidence of everything that denial would be futile. Finally, I took out a small envelope containing a brief note I had written that morning. Not a desperate plea, not an angry tirade, just a few lines in my neat handwriting. "Jake, I know where you are and who you're with. I know what you've been doing for the past 6 months. I've seen all the messages. I've packed my essentials and contacted a lawyer. When you return home, we can discuss the logistics of ending our marriage with dignity, or at least what remains of it. Christina." I placed the note on top of the album, securing it with the compass so it wouldn't blow away if a breeze entered the tent. Then I stood and looked at the arrangement. It wasn't dramatic or destructive. It wouldn't cause a scene for the other campers. But for Jake, it would be impossible to ignore or explain away. He would know without a doubt that his deception was over. As I zipped the tent closed exactly as I had found it, I felt no urge to cry or scream or destroy their belongings. The pain was there deep and throbbing, but alongside it was a sense of power. I had acted on my own terms. I had refused to be a passive victim in the story of my own marriage. I walked back to my car without rushing just another visitor leaving the park. No one stopped me. No one questioned me. I had come and gone like a ghost, leaving behind only the evidence of truth. As I drove to the Mountain View Inn, I thought about Jake and Amanda returning from their hike, laughing and planning their evening together, unaware that everything had changed. I imagined Jake opening the tent, seeing the items I had left reading my note. Would he panic? Would he feel shame? Would he immediately call me? Or would he be too stunned to react? I checked into the hotel, a charming, rustic place with views of the surrounding hills. The friendly desk clerk asked if I was in town for hiking or fishing. I smiled and said I was just passing through, needing some time to think. She gave me a key to a room on the second floor away from the main road, quiet and private. Perfect for waiting. In my room, I set my phone on the bedside table and took a shower, washing away the tension of the day. I ordered a simple dinner from room service and ate by the window, watching the sun begin its descent behind the hills. And I waited for Jake to discover what I had left behind. At 8:47 that evening, my phone rang. Jake's name flashed on the screen. I had been expecting this call, had rehearsed what I would say, how I would remain calm and dignified. Still seeing his name, knowing the conversation we were about to have, sent a rush of adrenaline through me. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Jake," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. There was silence for a moment, then his voice came through tight and strained. "Christina, where are you?" "Somewhere safe," I replied. "I assume you found what I left for you." Another pause. I could hear him breathing, could almost feel his mind racing, calculating, trying to find an angle, an explanation, a way out. "You were here, at the campsite." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes." "How did you know where to find me?" I almost laughed at the absurdity of his question. After all the lies, the betrayal, the manipulation he was concerned with, how I had tracked him down. "That's really what you want to ask me right now. Not why I was there, or what I'm going to do next, but how I found you." I heard him exhale sharply. "Christina, this isn't what it looks like." "Stop," I said firmly. "Just stop. I saw the messages, Jake, all of them, the photos, the plans. I know exactly what this is. I've known for days." "If you'll just let me explain," he started, but I cut him off. "There's nothing to explain. You've been having an affair with Amanda for at least 6 months. You've been lying to me about working weekends and business trips. You bought camping equipment specifically to take her away for romantic getaways. You've betrayed every promise you ever made to me. Those are the facts. There's no explanation that changes them." Silence again, then a shift in his tone. The defensiveness fell away, replaced by something that sounded like desperation. "Please, Christina, don't do anything rash. We can work through this. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But 8 years of marriage has to count for something." "It counted for something to me," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "That's why I never broke my vows. That's why I was faithful and honest and committed. You're the one who decided 8 years wasn't worth protecting." "I'll end it with her," he said quickly. "Right now. I'll tell her it's over and come home. We can go to counseling. We can rebuild. Please, Christina, don't throw away everything we have." His words might have moved me a few days ago. I might have clung to the hope of reconciliation, of fixing what was broken. But now, hearing him switch so quickly from denial to bargaining, I felt only a sad clarity. This man, who I had loved and trusted for 8 years, was still trying to manipulate me, still treating me as if I were a problem to be managed, rather than a person who had been deeply wounded. "I'm not throwing away anything, Jake. You already did that. I'm simply acknowledging the reality of what's happened and making decisions accordingly. I've packed some of my things, and I won't be home when you return. I've contacted a lawyer, and you'll be hearing from them next week." "A lawyer?" His voice rose in panic. "Christina, no. We don't need lawyers. We need to talk to work this out between us." "We're beyond that," I said quietly. "You had months to make different choices, months to be honest, months to consider what you were risking. You chose Amanda repeatedly, day after day. Now I'm choosing myself." I heard a muffled sound, as if he had covered the phone. Was Amanda there listening? Was he trying to hide his distress from her? The thought no longer hurt as much as it might have days ago. When Jake spoke again, his voice had changed once more. Now there was anger. "So that's it. You invade my privacy, spy on me, drive all the way up here to go through my things, and then refuse to even discuss our marriage. Who does that? This isn't the Christina I know." "And you aren't the Jake I thought I knew," I replied calmly. "Maybe we never really knew each other at all." His anger escalated. "What am I supposed to tell Amanda? You've embarrassed us both with your little stunt." I couldn't help but laugh a short, bitter sound. "That's your concern right now. How embarrassed you are in front of your mistress. Figure it out, Jake. Tell her whatever you want. That's between you two now." "You'll regret this," he said, his voice low. "When you calm down and think clearly, you'll realize you're overreacting. Affairs happen in marriages. People make mistakes. Throwing away 8 years over one indiscretion is irrational." "One indiscretion?" I repeated, incredulous. "You've been seeing her for at least 6 months. That's not a mistake or an indiscretion. That's a choice you made every single day, and now I'm making mine." I ended the call before he could respond, before his manipulations could continue. My hand shook slightly as I placed the phone on the bedside table. The conversation had gone more or less as I had expected Jake, cycling through denial, bargaining, and anger when he realized he couldn't control the situation or my response to it. But I had held firm. I had spoken my truth without breaking down or giving in to his attempts to minimize what he had done. I hadn't shouted or called him names or made threats. I had simply stated facts and boundaries clearly and calmly. And in doing so, I had reclaimed a piece of myself that had been drowning in pain and confusion since discovering his betrayal. My phone buzzed with text messages over the next hour. Jake alternated between apologies, pleas for another chance, and thinly veiled accusations that I was being hasty and unreasonable. I read each message but didn't respond. There was nothing more to say tonight. The decisions had been made, the path forward set in motion. Instead, I opened my laptop and booked a flight to my sister's home in Colorado. I would stay with her while sorting out the next steps. I emailed the divorce attorney I had selected, requesting an appointment for Monday morning. I notified my school principal that I would need a few personal days the following week. Each action was a small step toward my new reality, a reality I hadn't chosen but was now embracing with as much grace as I could muster. That night in the quiet of the hotel room, I cried for what had been lost. Not just my marriage, but the future I had planned, the trust I had given so freely, the love I had believed in completely. I cried until there were no tears left, until exhaustion claimed me, and I fell into a dreamless sleep. It was a necessary release, the final acknowledgement of grief before moving forward. In the morning, I would drive back to our house now, just a house, and no longer a home, to pack more of my belongings before Jake returned. I would leave his key on the kitchen counter, alongside a printed list of recommended divorce mediators. And then I would walk away not as a defeated wife, but as a woman who had found her strength in the midst of betrayal. A woman who knew her worth and refused to accept anything less than the respect and honesty she deserved. 1 year has passed since that weekend at Silver Lake. 1 year since I left those items in Jake's tent and changed the course of both our lives. In that time, I've learned more about resilience and self-worth than I had in all my previous years combined. The days immediately following my discovery were a blur of practical matters. I stayed with my sister in Colorado for 2 weeks using my accumulated personal days from school. She welcomed me with open arms, setting up her guest room as a sanctuary where I could begin to process what had happened. During those initial days, I oscillated between numbness and overwhelming pain. Sometimes I would sit for hours staring out the window at the mountains, unable to focus on anything but the hollow feeling in my chest. Jake called and texted constantly for the first few days. Each message followed the same pattern: apology, excuse, plea for reconciliation, followed by frustration or anger when I didn't respond as he wanted. My sister took my phone at one point, screening messages so I could have space to breathe and think without his constant intrusions. The meeting with the divorce attorney was clarifying. She explained my options, the likely timeline, and what I could reasonably expect in terms of property division. Wisconsin's status as a no-fault divorce state meant that Jake's infidelity wouldn't directly impact the legal proceedings, but the evidence I had gathered would give me leverage in negotiations. The attorney's matter-of-fact approach helped me frame the situation as a problem to be solved rather than just a wound to be endured. When I returned home, Jake had moved most of his things to a nearby apartment. He had left a letter handwritten on our personalized stationery begging for another chance. He claimed he had ended things with Amanda, that he realized what he was losing, that the items I left in the tent had woken him up to the reality of his actions. But it was too late. The trust was shattered beyond repair. I couldn't unknow what I now knew about him, about his capacity for deception and betrayal. The divorce process was surprisingly straightforward. Jake, perhaps motivated by guilt or a desire to preserve what remained of his reputation among our friends and family, didn't contest any of my requests. We sold the house, divided the proceeds, and split our other assets equitably. 6 months after that weekend at Silver Lake, I was legally single again. In the midst of endings, I found new beginnings. I transferred to a different elementary school in the district, wanting a fresh start, away from colleagues who knew Jake and might be aware of our situation. My new position as a 4th-grade teacher came with additional responsibilities, developing curriculum, which kept me productively busy during a time when I might otherwise have dwelled in sadness. I also found unexpected support. A divorced teachers' support group met monthly at a local coffee shop. Initially reluctant to attend, I found comfort in the shared experiences and practical advice of others who had walked this path before me. They understood the unique pain of having your private heartbreak become fodder for workplace gossip. They offered strategies for responding to well-meaning but intrusive questions from students, parents, and colleagues. Natalie remained my rock throughout the process. She helped me find a lovely 1-bedroom apartment in a historic building downtown with tall windows that flooded the space with light. On moving day, she and her husband Ryan, along with several other friends, transformed the daunting task into something almost joyful. We ordered pizza, drank wine from paper cups, and arranged my furniture until the space felt like mine. That night, sleeping in my new bed, in my new home, I felt the first real sense of peace since discovering Jake's betrayal. Healing came in small moments, in daily acts of reclaiming my identity. I returned to hobbies I had neglected during my marriage. I took a pottery class, rediscovered my love of photography, joined a hiking group that explored local trails each weekend. With each new experience, each new connection, the pain receded a little more. Not gone, but no longer all-consuming. About 8 months after our separation, I ran into Amanda at a grocery store. I had seen photos of her, of course, but never met her in person. She was in the produce section examining avocados when our eyes met. Recognition flashed across her face, followed by unmistakable discomfort. She started to turn away, but I approached her directly. "You must be Amanda," I said, my voice calm. She nodded, unable to meet my gaze. "Christina, I'm so sorry. I never meant to—" I held up a hand to stop her. "I'm not here for apologies or explanations. I just want you to know that whatever happened between you and Jake, I'm okay now. Better than okay, actually." Amanda looked surprised, perhaps expecting anger or accusations. "We're not together anymore," she offered hesitantly. "It ended right after that weekend." I nodded, unsurprised. "I hope you find someone who's truly available next time. Someone who doesn't have to lie to be with you. You deserve that. Everyone does." I walked away, then feeling lighter somehow. The encounter could have been awkward or painful, but instead, it felt like closing a chapter that had been left partially open. Last month, almost exactly a year after the camping trip, I saw Jake for the first time since our divorce was finalized. I was sitting in a downtown cafe grading papers and enjoying a latte when he walked in. He didn't notice me at first, ordering his coffee and checking his phone. When he turned and saw me, he froze momentarily, then walked over to my table. "Christina," he said, his voice hesitant. "You look well." I gestured to the chair across from me, an invitation he accepted with visible relief. Up close, I could see that the year had aged him. There were new lines around his eyes, a certain weariness in his posture that hadn't been there before. "How are you, Jake?" I asked, genuinely curious rather than accusatory. He sighed, running a hand through his hair in that familiar gesture I once found endearing. "Honestly, I've been better. The company downsized, and I was let go 3 months ago. I'm freelancing now, which is okay, but not stable. And well, relationships have been challenging since us." I nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Not satisfaction at his struggles, but a certain sense of cosmic balance. Actions have consequences often unforeseen and far-reaching. "I think about what happened all the time," he continued. "What I threw away. How differently things could have turned out if I had made better choices." "There's no point dwelling on what might have been," I said gently. "We can only move forward from where we are." Jake looked at me with genuine regret in his eyes. "You deserved so much better than what I did to you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I understand now how much I hurt you. That weekend, finding those things you left, seeing our wedding photos, the compass, it broke something in me, made me see myself clearly for the first time in months." I thought about his words carefully before responding. "I didn't leave those things to hurt you, Jake. I left them to make sure you couldn't hide from the truth anymore. Not the truth about us, but the truth about yourself. About who you had become." He nodded slowly. "It worked. Too late for us, but it worked." After a pause, he asked, "Are you happy now, Christina?" The question was sincere, without the manipulative undertones that had characterized our last conversations. I considered it honestly. "I'm getting there," I replied. "I've learned a lot about myself this past year, about what I need in relationships, about my own strength. I'm teaching at Westside Elementary now, developing a new reading curriculum. I have good friends, a lovely apartment. I'm dating occasionally, nothing serious yet." I smiled slightly. "So, yes, I think I am happy, or at least moving confidently in that direction." We talked for a few more minutes, exchanging the kind of pleasant surface-level conversation that former spouses who have made peace with their past might share. Then Jake finished his coffee, said goodbye, and walked out of the cafe and out of my life once more this time, without drama or pain. As I watched him go, I felt the final pieces of our story settling into place. The anger was gone. The sharp edges of betrayal had been worn smooth by time and perspective. What remained was a quiet certainty that I had handled a devastating situation with dignity and courage, that I had refused to let someone else's choices define my worth or determine my future. I learned that sometimes the quietest actions speak the loudest truths, that leaving a simple reminder in a tent could be more powerful than any angry confrontation, that standing up for yourself doesn't always mean shouting or fighting, but can be as simple as walking away with your head held high. Most importantly, I learned that healing isn't about forgetting the pain or pretending it never happened. It's about integrating it into your story, allowing it to transform you into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate, both toward others and toward yourself. If you're watching this and facing your own betrayal or heartbreak, know that the path forward exists even when you can't yet see it clearly. Your worth isn't determined by someone else's ability to recognize it. Your future isn't limited by someone else's failure to honor your past. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to fight harder for someone who has already let you go, but to quietly, firmly show them exactly what they've lost while you walk away towards something better. Have you ever had to leave a reminder for someone who betrayed your trust? How did you find the strength to walk away with dignity? Share your story in the comments below, and if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for witnessing my journey. And remember, the end of one story is just the beginning of another, often more beautiful one.